ready to build resiliency, create a healthy lifestyle, and overcome adversity with a warrior mindset. This is Define the Fight with Mariah Prussia.
Hey, welcome to this fine Monday morning. You know what? We made it in. No slipping, no sliding as of yet. But you know what? Sometimes you got to put on the skates and just roll with it. Today I'm really excited because, there's so many different things that are going on in the world, and there's solution finders that come into play that you get to meet. And it's not an everyday kind of perspective of the ability to have somebody like this on the show. So today joining me is Billy Bond, a former U.S. Army sapper, journeyman, electrician, trained butcher, permaculture designer, farmer, author of Scrapsteading, and the host of the Permaculture Pimpcast. With a passion of self-sufficiency and sustainability, he inspires through his YouTube channel, Perma Pastures Farm, where he shares practical solutions for living closer to the land. And I know we all can do that, and we all need to. Billy is dedicated to helping his community, combining resilience, resourcefulness, and restoration in his work. Now, talk about a mouthful there, Billy. Welcome to the show.
Well, thank you so much for having me, Mariah.
I'm excited to have you on, and I'm excited to learn more because I know you're extremely passionate about what you do, but your energy also in the fact that you get it. You're grounded, and you want to help other individuals not only heal their ground, but be grounded in how they walk through life. So, I just really want to dive in and learn more about when you were a U.S. Army sapper, because I know that's not an easy job.
No, in my case, it was, it was years ago. And it's it's something I draw upon even this day. It's basically what I'm doing right now is a combination of military tactics combined with permaculture, combined with preparedness. And I don't know that anybody else has ever put them all under one hat, even though it seemed to me from the very beginning that they should all be combined, because I don't think one has to be mutually exclusive from the other. But yeah, all the things I learned in sapper school and all the things I did as a sapper, whether it was the knot tying, the rigging, rappelling, mountaineering, you name it. I mean, I apply every single bit of it. There's not a day that goes by, honestly, where I don't draw upon that information in some way or another. So it's just a joy to be able to do this life. And I feel like the luckiest person alive.
When you look at the different levels of preparation and skills that you developed in that, there's also mindset. And I want to know how that mindset transferred into what you're currently doing today, because that is a missing piece for a lot of individuals. That warrior mindset, being able to dive in, being able to focus is really challenging. So what were some of the pieces that you took from that mindset and how you carry it forward?
Well, the name of your show fits it. I mean, Define the Fight. Really, when you get down to brass tacks in this life, when you work as a farmer or a permaculture designer or anything like it, there are going to be days where it's going to be nasty. But there is not one thing that ever happens with the weather that I haven't experienced 10 times worse before in my previous life. So whether it was working as an electrician and, good days, bad days, warm, hot, cold, whatever, it doesn't matter. Working as a sapper, there was no escaping inclement weather. You just had to live through it, and you just had to. I mean, we had a lot of different sayings, some of which I'm not so sure I could get away with on terrestrial radio, but it was basically there was no such thing as a gay man on a cold night, because two guys, it was not uncommon in some of the worst conditions out there for two guys to be sharing a poncho liner and, doing what you had to do to stay warm. Now, hang on. I know how that sounds, but at the end of the day, it really comes down to just sucking it up. And you as a fighter would know this as well as anybody. So, and honestly, in this permaculture world and in the homesteading world, I've often said that homesteaders can either be the best thing that's ever happened to the landscape or the worst. But in all honesty, as a designer, as a person that's been at this for well over 2 decades, these days, we have so many people going into the homestead space. They get out there, they may have worked in an office environment their whole lives. They all of a sudden find themselves in inclement weather or nasty weather. And oh my goodness, this really sucks. And then they get on the first thing smoking right back to suburbia and, forget about this life entirely. I see it more than you would even possibly imagine, because For me, just living a rough lifestyle, a tough lifestyle, it's just part of the it's just part of the game. It's just part of doing this. This is why I call my podcast the Pimpcast. Permaculture is my passion. It's an acronym. That's what it stands for. And the passion is the only thing that's going to get you through these awful times, or you got an animal that doesn't make it, or whatever the case may be. You have got to be so passionate that it pushes you past those really, really tough times.
And, taking it from homesteading just to general in life, whatever profession it is, you're going to see that individuals, some people really like to be challenged, like bring it on, because I'm going to embrace that growth as it comes, and I'm only going to become stronger through that. But you are going to have individuals that are going to turn and run the other direction. So when we're looking at homesteading, we see now that a lot of individuals are starting to wake up in a certain way of, okay, I see the importance of growing my own food. I want to make sure that I know what is going into the soil, into my mouth, into my children. Why do you think, or what was that turning point do you feel for individuals to say, hey, we need to start growing our own food or our livestock, so on and so forth?
It's usually a massive health crisis for most people. There's a number of others over the last administration. They thought, I mean, I guess you could say I'm a political atheist. I see them all as polecats in my world. But anyway, we always see this over the last 25 years of doing this, that whenever there's a Democrat in office, people run out there and get homesteads. Whenever there's a Republican, they acquiesce. And as of late, we've seen something of a homestead tsunami, as Joel Salatin calls it, of record numbers getting into this space. And they get out there, it's sometimes on the heels of a health crisis, or like one guy I know in particular came down with cancer and thought, oh, good night, man, I got to get out here and do this. And then found himself, of course, living in an HOA where they're going to define what you can and can't grow in your place. He gets out there, wants me to do something of a consultation, and he's like, well, I can't have chickens. And I'm like, what do you mean you can't have chickens? I mean, that's the backbone of the homestead. If you get down to brass tacks, I mean, chickens are truly the backbone of a homestead. And he's like, well, I live in an HOA. And I'm like, so what's that got to do with anything? He's like, well, we can't have chickens here. I'm like, you can't have roosters or you can't have chickens. Well, he goes and looks and says, well, we can't have chickens, period. And I said, well, tell him, can you have dogs? And he says, yeah. I'm like, well, tell them your chickens identify as dogs and see how they respond to that. And I've given that advice, I don't know how many times, for people to go out there and do it. But basically, he acquiesced simply because the powers that shouldn't be in his HOA were telling him, you can't do this. Well, I'm like, okay, there's something you can grow. You can grow, okay, can you have rabbits? I mean, there's some place, no matter where you are, at the end of the day, if you're growing mushrooms in a closet and a spare room in your house, you are by definition a farmer. So, for so many people, that it starts with a health crisis. Other people see the things unfolding right now, the degeneration of what I'll call the American, what's going on in America right now. There's a whole variety of reasons, but now all of a sudden I'm starting to see that pendulum of so many people thinking, oh, shoot, I need to see about my food. I see it starting to swing back the other way. And I guess time will tell. But I mean, that's typically what I've seen, is that when a Republican's in office, people basically go right back to the suburbs, get rid of the land they bought. And then when Democrats are in there, it goes the other way. So we'll see how it pans out.
Well, what I can say is, growing up on a farm as a young female and then living into the city, right? I lived here for many, many years, and seeing different things starting to shift and levels of uncertainty. It was like, okay, I know that I need to bring my boys back out to the farm. That was my whole purpose of, okay, let's shift out to the farm. The boys are going to learn how to work on the farm. But then also, too, having the ability to grow your own food, I think, is key when you start looking at food. Where is it coming in? How is it coming in? How is it labeled? So on and so forth. So, Billy, I'm going to have you dive in on defining what permaculture is, and then also the essence of homesteading.
Sure. Well, in a nutshell, permaculture stands for permanent agriculture, but this is the biggest disability in permaculture right now, as I see it, is that there is no elegant definition for the word permaculture. So instead of doing that, I usually break it down like this. First of all, understand what the prime directive of permaculture is, which you kind of defined a moment ago, describing that you brought your boys out to the farm. And of course, nothing teaches you the consequence of your conduct like physical work. So kudos for that. So the prime directive of permaculture in a nutshell is basically take ownership of everything you do and fail to do. Okay, so then we break down it in 3 ethics. Okay, now that you got the prime directive, now let's talk about the ethics. There's only 3 of them. And if you are doing these 3, you are essentially doing permaculture. So the first is earth care, then people care, and then abundance given to the previous 2. Now, the people on the hardcore left are going to call that third one fair share, but homie, don't play that. Because I'm not going to have somebody just roll up here and think they're entitled to the bushel of apples I got hanging on these trees over here. So I don't play this fair share stuff. It sounds a little too close to communism to me. So earth care, people care, and abundance given to the previous 2. If you can work within that framework, you, by definition, are doing permaculture. Like I said, I could give you some nebulous definition, but that is the biggest weakness of permaculture is that there is no elegant definition. Every single time I've tried to define it, or I've heard others define it, people will say, okay, so what is it again? So it's just easier for me to give you the prime directive and the ethics. So if you work within that framework, you by definition are all about permaculture.
Let's talk about those 3 points of ethics. So you circle back to earth care. What does earth care look like to you? Because a lot of individuals don't necessarily recognize that. I mean, we were brought up, hey, kill the weeds, use Roundup, and not recognizing the fact that the dandelions have healing properties. So define what earth care actually is, because we have the chemical-based companies pushing this is what you need to do, when in all reality, we're killing the earth.
Absolutely. And that is the most brilliant question anybody could ever ask me. And strangely, with all the interviews I've ever done, you're the first to ask. So earth care at the end of the day means, I mean, it sounds simple like earth care, but that's going to mean so much to so many people. But if you're asking me, what that means is, for me on my farm, is we basically grow everything around here. You name it. All of it works within this permaculture system. There is no waste. But first of all, if you don't have soil, you don't have a farm at the end of the day, not the way I'm rolling. So in these mountains of Western North Carolina, our animals move, depending on the time of the year, they move every single day. We either do a high density grazing model, or in a nutshell, what that means to most people is basically our animals never sit in one spot for more than 3 days, because that's when you start getting parasite problems. So let's say we run our sheep through and we got them in a paddock. Okay, they're there depending on the time of the year. When the grass is growing fast, you move them fast. When the grass is growing slow, you move them slower. So right now they're on a 2-day rotation in a larger paddock, whereas in the middle of summer or early spring, they can move once a day or twice a day. So naturally, I'm not having them rape the soil. They just take what they need, they move on, and then to break up the parasite cycle, we bring in our chickens and ducks behind them. So they go through and they break apart whatever patties, the cows or the sheep or whatever you have, whatever your ruminants may have left behind. And then they move on. And then those animals will never be back on that piece of ground, depending on which model you use, for at least 30 days. But depending on the model, it could be up to 180 days, depending on which one you use. So earth care to me, and this is why I was saying, homesteaders can be the best or the worst thing in the world. If you have a poor grazing model, or if you're feeding hay all year long, all of my neighbors around me, they've been feeding hay since August. My sheep right now, I can show you, in fact, I'll probably even do a YouTube video about it. They are on green grass that I stockpiled right now as we speak. They are not being fed hay unless there's a strategic purpose for it. So that's how we look after the earth. So what we find out, not only are we fattening up animals, not only are we, taking care of ourselves, remember that people care, every single time I process these animals, all of their guts, all the things we don't need, there is zero waste on this farm. And I can't emphasize that enough. Everything we don't eat, everything my dogs don't eat, everything we feed, basically everything but pork to our pigs and everything but chickens to our chickens, whatever they don't eat, we make biocomplete compost out of, and guess where it goes? Right back on those fields in the form of a compost extract. So this is how we care for the earth in a way that seems 180 degrees out of phase. I mean, you think about mainstream. Now, I'm going to offend a lot of people where you are right now, but I'm going to say it. 9 times out of 10, most of our farming practices today are more akin to mining than farming. We extract, and then we put back in just a tiny little bit and then wonder why our number one export out of the United States of amnesia is soil going right down the Mississippi. So we can use some of these practices that seem revolutionary, but honestly, it's the way that it was done, for time immemorial before we got into, our curry in a hurry society.
I want to circle back on one of the points that you made in regards to rotating the grazing. How does one come up with a plan? Because everybody has different acreage. So when you look at a smaller plot of land, or if you look, I'm going to just throw like our farm out there. We have roughly about 11 acres of land. What would something like that, an example ballpark on a rotating of graze look like?
Well, I'll tell you what, why don't I do it just on a side note? I'll do a consultation for you on the side and tell me if the practices I ask you to do, if you put them together, tell me if you don't increase your yield by probably hundreds of magnitudes, depending on how you're doing it right now. Okay, so on 11 acres, what do you currently have in terms of ruminants?
Well, right now, what we have in regards to just in general on the farm, we are planting more of the orchard trees. We have bees, we have chickens, right? So when you're saying nothing goes to waste, I get that, because what we're doing with, deer hunting season just being over, we literally took the deer carcasses from my dad and we fed them to the chickens. And I tell you what, they really clean the bone, the bone until it starts spurring. And then their eggs are so much stronger. But when we look at the land itself, when we're looking at grass, we're probably looking at the fact of more of 6 to 7 acres when you take the outbuildings out, and then you're looking at forest-wise.
Okay, so let's just call it 5 acres for easy numbers.
You got it.
Now, I just did a consultation, 2 of them in a row, which my son basically does most of our consultations. But at the end of the day, just did 2 consultations on acreage that was about that size, and I kid you not, on 5 acres. And in this area, I mean, they had, I think in both cases, they had goats, they had sheep, and they had cows. First of all, it was so overgrazed that it looked like a moonscape. So where you start is where you're able to start. So on 5 acres, let's say that's all you have of pasture. Well, a really good place to start would be on 5 acres, maybe get a couple of sheep, because that's depending on the nature of it. And it all depends on where you start and where we can go. So in your area, it's generally flat.
Yep.
Maybe you start with a pair, maybe 3 at the most. You go out there, and depending on what your soil looks like, it's going to depend how often you move them. Now, this time of year, you're not growing grass. So I would be doing a Greg Judy model where basically you're putting down hay with the express purpose that they're going to eat. They're going to eat some of it, and then they're going to trample some of it. And then, of course, they're going to put their manure and urine over the rest of it. And some people are going to think you're wasting hay, but you're really not, especially in an area like yours where you're going to have snow cover from time to time. Well, you will allow that stuff to break down and feed your soil microbes, because at the end of the day, I'm not even a grass farmer. I'm a microbe farmer. So when I look at the nematodes, the protozoa, the bacteria, the fungi, the arthropods, all those things down in the soil, if I concentrate on feeding them and providing what they need, and bare soil is the worst, you will be shocked. Every step you take towards nature, nature's going to take 10 steps back to you. But every time you fight her, she's going to come back with a vengeance. So it all depends on where you start. And then in a grazing model, typically, if you want an easy place to start, let them eat a third, they stomp a third, and you leave a third, then you move them. Eat a third, stomp a third, move it, and then you move them. You're going to develop a grazer's eye in 6 months, especially when you do this every single day. Most people do the Columbus method when it comes to their grazing animals. They stick them out there in the fall, and then in the winter, they might check on them. They make sure they got water, and they absolutely decimate the soil. Well, we can prove that by using high density grazing, not only can we regenerate, because I'm not in the business of sustainability. I don't play that game. I'm in the regeneration business. We can not only fatten up our animals, we can get them to slaughter. We can do it with zero. Well, basically in time, you can do it with very little inputs and make money in the process. So It's not difficult. It's just a matter of taking the right dog to the hunt, and it all depends on your methods. That's really what it comes down to. But most people just don't want to fool with their animals every single day. Now, it is going to require more out of you, but at the end of the day, it's what's required for me to be in a regenerative system.
Well, and it's worth it. So you're going to put in your time into what is worth it. And when you're looking at the soil and the benefits that are coming from it, you're going to have healthy soil, you're going to have healthy animals, and then you're going to have healthy foods. We're going to dive into microbes because you know what? For a lot of individuals, microbes are like, yeah, what are you talking about? So what do microbes really help with when it comes to the soil?
I got to say, I'm blown away with your questions because they're the most important questions anybody could ever ask. And nobody ever asked these questions. So I'll just break it down like this. When you have a green thing in your field, I don't care if it's a grass, tree, it doesn't matter. Here's the way it works in the most simplest terms. Okay, so that tree or whatever you have growing out there, it has roots. And at the end of those roots, the tree, the grasses, the forbs, it doesn't even matter. They put out what's called exudates, basically anything that leaks out of the body of whatever structure that may be. Well, those exudates are primarily to feed two things, and that is your bacteria and your fungi. Now, it goes like this. So Mr. Tree tells the bacteria and the fungi, look, if you want to eat, if you want more sugars from me, that is, you better go out and get this shopping list. And so they go out and do it. So the bacteria and the fungi go out there and they break down sand, silt, clay, everything you need. Dr. Elaine Ingham has proven this over and over and over, and a number of others, that everything you need, no matter where you are in the United States of Amnesia, is already in the soil. They go out there with that shopping list and they bring it back. Now, depending on how good that shopping list is, depends on how well that tree, that grass, that forb, whatever the case may be, will be fed. So if they're fed well, they multiply. So the bacteria and fungi multiply. Then you have things like nematodes, arthropods, protozoa, all those things. This is why when we look at soil under the microscope, my wife and I, whenever we look at soil under the microscope, it is honestly one of the most depressing things when people send in soil samples by and large. Even every single bag of compost that you buy off the shelf in the store, we've tested it all. If there's any life in those bags at all, it's not about NPK or nitrogen, potassium. It's not about any of that stuff. It's a matter of the life in the soil. And if we can concentrate on putting the right life in the soil or encouraging that life in the soil, you will see production in ways that you can't even imagine, but you destroy it every single time you give your animals dewormer. Because remember, the nematodes, protozoa, well, nematode is a kind of worm. Okay, worms are your top predators. They're like your lions in the savannah in the soil. Every time you put dewormer out there, you're getting rid of the lions on your savannah. So we don't do that sort of thing. There's all kinds of natural products and stuff we can get into. But when you look after your microbes, if you break it down, I mean, Mariah, we live in a reductionistic world where somebody says, okay, you have high blood pressure. Okay, take this pill. Call me in the morning. Okay, you have this problem. Take this pill. No, we don't do that in permaculture, not in the kind of permaculture I do. We look at holistic solutions that solve multiple problems. So if I look under the microscope and I say, okay, well, I'm missing fungi. Okay, I do the things that put the fungi back in the soil. Or I'm missing bacteria. Or in most cases, if they're in that soil, they are dead in the middle of that soil just because somebody went out there and sprayed chemicals on it. And we don't have to do that. There are pioneers out there like the great and late great Masanobu Fukuoka, people like Joel Salatin, people like Jim Garris, who's near your neck of the woods, people like Greg Judy. So many people out there that have proven that all you need is to take the right dog to the hunt in nature. And if you care for your microbes, and it's simple, it is so simple to do the right thing, but you can't get there when you're overgrazing. You can't do it when you let your animals trample an area where the compaction's so awful, you can't do anything about it. Or it takes a long time to do something about it. All you have to do is take the right dog to the hunt and you'll be shocked at what happens. But yeah, look at your microbes, concern yourself with your microbes. And at the end of the day, you'll be shocked at how quickly things can turn around.
And I love how you break it down in such a simple fashion for people to understand. Is like, if you're overgrazing, that's a problem, right? Spreading out the grazing, utilize the manure, have your chickens break it down. There's just this full cycle that a lot of people might be missing. And when you have a gap in that circle, it's never going to be complete, and you're not going to see things come into flourish, right? Or into full fruition. Now, I know that you're also in North Carolina, and clearly with the hurricane, that, the rains, the torrential, everything that came down in North Carolina, there's a lot of damage that has happened to the soil there. What are you seeing, since you're in that neck of the woods, on the type of damage that has happened to their agriculture?
In a nutshell, it looks like Godzilla walked over Western North Carolina. That's exactly what it looks like. Entire mountainsides gone, washed away. Talked to Dane Wigington from Geoengineering Watch, and basically he did the numbers on it. We had the equivalent of all the water that goes over Niagara Falls in 2 years land in the area I live in 2 hours. Now, part of permaculture means that we prepare for our 1,000-year events. And that's exactly why everybody 360 degrees, I'm not saying this to brag because I know the good Lord was looking after us, but everybody by and large 360 degrees around us is absolutely decimated. The only thing we lost was a single oak that I needed to cut down anyway, because when energy hits your property, think about it, whether it's rain, whether it's wind, whether it's sunlight, you only have three things you can do. You can capture it, at least for a little while, you can deflect it, or you can amplify it. And in the best of circumstances, you can do all three, which is exactly what we do. And so we weren't that affected, in all honesty. But the way everything else looks, it is a complete mess. We've done soil tests around here by 3 different ones. The mainstream media is telling us everything's okay. But meanwhile, all along the rivers, it is looking like it's a toxic wasteland. But by taking the right dogs to the hunt, by making biocomplete compost, by using some other methods from other people that I'm working with right now, I got test plots going right now, and we are going to put this place on the mend in record time. And we started a foundation called Living Soil Foundation. And the whole purpose of it is to pay for the testing, because there are a lot of people out here doing bioremediation, or at least they're trying to. A lot of them, they mean well, but they really don't have much of a background in it. But you have to be able to gauge whether or not what you're doing is successful. So we started this foundation with the express purpose of being able to test the soil to ensure that what we are doing is absolutely working. Because right now we have NGOs and a number of well-moneyed interests that are rolling in right now and telling some of these old boys that have lived up in these hills for going on 7 generations that they'll give them $17,000 for $2 million worth of land, because we're not getting any help from the federal government. It's basically, at the end of the day, people helping other people around here. And my goal is to bring this soil. Remember, I'm not in the sustainability business. I'm in the regeneration business. I want to regenerate this ground, and I want to do it in record time. And I'm proving that it can be done, not by using chemicals, but by using what the good Lord has already put on this earth, marshaling it, making extracts out of it, putting it out there. In fact, as soon as I'm done with this interview with you, I'm making compost extract right now to go work on a project near the river with a bunch of people where they want to live in a beautiful spot, but they just can barely afford to live there. And they have children down by this river, and it's a toxic mess. And I'm going to go out there, and I'm doing it on my own dime and my own time to help these people to ensure that they can live the life that they want to live without fear of being poisoned by all the chemicals that came down that river, and most of which the government is lying about. So that's how we're using it's cool how you were able to to lead up to where we are. So we're working the soil, we're working the microbes, we're doing all these different things, taking all these different dogs to hunt. And it's like everything is culminating right now into the projects we're doing, trying to restore this land better than it was when we found it.
Well, and that's what it's all about. And I love the fact of the resiliency, but then also what you're bringing forth to your community in regards to restoration. It was North Carolina was spoken about maybe a day, 2 days. CNN never even showed up there or wasn't even allowed in to North Carolina. So then the question for a lot of individuals should be is why? right? Knowing that there's a lot of different, you look at the lithium, you look at the quartz, the different things that are located in North Carolina, and why is there such a big push to get individuals off of the land? Well, I think we all know what the whole goal is and the capture is, but the key thing is with individuals like yourself and others that are like, hey, no, we're not going to go down without a fight. And I think that's the most important, is when an individual can define the fight and recognize, hey, I want this more than I want something else. And this is all about keeping our land in our family and doing something with it so that we can recreate what was here before, but make it better. And, at the end of the day, we need to work together to help improve overall health for nature and for ourselves and for our families. Billy, you have a couple different things that I really want to share and highlight for individuals. So I know you have a YouTube channel, which is called Perma Pastures Farm. Let's talk about your YouTube channel and what people can expect to see when they head over there and subscribe.
Sure. You're going to see that we're all about permaculture, preparedness, and practical living. You're going to find out that as of late, because the local media isn't really doing their job regarding what happened following this hurricane that hit Western North Carolina, that I've become something of a reporter, an area of my life that I never, ever, ever wanted to find myself again, because I used to do that sort of thing back in the day as a little side gig. But yeah, they're going to find that. They're going to find that we are probably the world's foremost experts and this can work no matter where you are. It's called the chicken tractor on steroids, where in one chicken system, we have playlist after playlist on how to do it, where you can use your chickens to provide all of the eggs you need, of course, all of the meat you need. Additionally, use this very system to produce 1 to 3 cubic yards of finished compost per week. And we're the world's experts on this system that was developed in Australia. So instead of sending our son off to college, we sent him off to Australia to learn under the best. We sent him off to Swoop, Virginia to learn under Joel Salatin. Instead of sending him to college, we sent him to go follow his passion, which is absolutely farming. And as a consequence, he basically started doing, what he loved at the age of 25. So you're going to see some of that on there. You're also going to see on that YouTube channel a number of ways, because I'm something of an orchardist. I've learned under Stefan Subkowiak, probably one of the world's best permaculture orchardists on the planet. I teach everybody what to prune, how to go about it, the time of year to do it, when to plant a tree, how to plant a tree. If you name it, if it has anything to do with farming, whether it's grazing, you name it, it is on this YouTube channel. And then the podcast we have is basically an extension of that. And the only reason I began it was because we were being stifled whenever I'd talk about certain things that were very innocuous, to be honest with you. So I started a podcast going back to my roots in radio, and on that Pimpcast, and I know it sounds a little off-putting when somebody says, oh, it's a Pimpcast. Well, the idea is, for those that can't tell, I'm a brown person. So I named it something that would appeal to people that may have come from a pretty hard place where I came from. And now, as a consequence, and it's really for everybody, but as a consequence, all these kids that grew up in the hood somewhere are now realizing that they don't have to be a football star. They don't have to be a star athlete. They don't have to be a rapper. They don't have to be any of those things. You can live a very successful, rewarding life by doing what I'm doing, by being a farmer and showing others how to do it as well. So in this podcast, I basically talk about all the things I would never get away with on YouTube. And I look forward to, not long from now, maybe having you as a guest on my show if you'd be open to it.
Oh, absolutely. I love what you stand for and who you are as an individual, because, education, recognizing that it's important to help other people. I think we've really missed that with the last X amount of years. We're standing on this rug, right? And we're just waiting for the rug to be pulled out from underneath our feet again. But then I question, it's like, why are we standing on the rug? No one said that we had to stand on this rug, which means that individuals have to make sure that they're looking after themselves and their families mentally, physically, spiritually, and emotionally, and then link arms with people with unbelievable energy, but knowledge to thrive, but then also to give back. And I think that's one big missing piece too, is the acts of service. So if you're an individual right now that feels like you're down and out in Beverly Hills, well, when was the last time that you gave back to an individual? That's where impact is really truly found, is in the acts of giving. But, I love the fact, Billy, again, I'm going to circle back, is how you're helping your community. Like you said, your intention wasn't to go back into like reporting or anything like that, but you are creating a voice for individuals in North Carolina because they have been blocked from sharing what is actually truly going on. And if you're an individual who has clearly no idea what's going on, go to Billy's, his YouTube channel, check it out, because the more that we know, the more that we can also help share, but then also give back. What was the name of your foundation again, too, Billy? So if individuals want to donate, it's a great spot for them to head to.
Yeah, we're working on a website right now. Thus far, through the YouTube channel and the podcast, we've probably raised close to $500,000 for different efforts out here in North Carolina. But what we've also found is that the grifters are coming out of the woodwork. I mean, it's unconscionable that people would do this sort of thing. So we're working on a website right now, but you can go to Give, Send, Go, and it's called Living Soil Foundation. And we're going to make sure every single dollar that is raised goes to the actual cause. And it's weird because I'm now finding myself in this strange position that I never really expected to find myself in. I'll be honest with you, Mariah, I was perfectly content to do my YouTube videos, show people how to farm. I teach butchery classes. In fact, just as a little side note, when you're talking about giving, I kid you not, last year, we gave away all the chickens we processed. We had to give away because I got 8 freezers out here and all of them are full. We had to give away 3 pigs. We showed people how to process them from start to finish, and then we gave it away. We give away so much is that when you use these methods, when you take the right dog to the hunt, you'll find out that you have so much abundance. Remember, earth care, people care, and abundance given to the previous 2. And some of those are other people out there. So we have to give away all this doggone abundance that we have. And that's why I'm out here to evangelize this magnificent design science we call permaculture. And I'm going to scream it from every rooftop possible. But it's also a little bit of it's a strange world when you do this type of thing, because at the end of the day, you just hope people are paying attention. But, at the end of the day, you got to be real mindful or careful how you impart your knowledge, because the wise don't need it and the fools don't heed it. But I'm hoping there are so many wise people honestly, if they're listening to somebody highly intelligent like you, I know that there are a lot of converts out there that can't wait to take some of these methods and put them to work for themselves.
And that's what it's all about, is, utilize the tools that are provided. So again, you can check out Billy Bond on Perma-Pastures, I can't even talk today. The struggle is real. Perma-Pastures Farm. And then also too, you guys, check out Living Soil Foundation. It's a great way to give back. If you don't have a lot of time to give, monetary also helps in regards to those different places. So Billy, I want to thank you for making the time to come on Define the Fight today, because I know that you are giving back in multiple ways, and we appreciate your time that you gave to us today.
Well, thank you so much. This is the most intelligent interviewer that I've been interviewed by in quite a while. So thank you so much for the fantastic questions.
Well, I appreciate your kind words. And you know what? Today, it's all about a new day. You have the opportunity to flip the script. If you started off on the wrong side of the bed, you know what? You're not in bed anymore. So kick it to the curb, go out there and define your fight. We'll see you next week.